Circle Time Magazine is a professional development talk show for early childhood educators. This show gives real-world examples of teaching and learning in a variety of early childhood education settings. Ideas for using appropriate and accessible materials. Every episode has tips and methods for you to try out too.
Welcome to Circle Time Magazine. We are your hosts. I'm Dawn Williams.
I'm Kristen Ainsley. Circle Time Magazine is a professional development talk show for early childhood educators, and it's a time for all of us to come together and have a circle time of our own. This season on Circle Time Magazine, it is all about positive behavior supports. We have 5 episodes. Each one builds on the other like a pyramid.
We begin in episode 1 with a strong foundation that is all about the importance of social emotional development and establishing supportive relationships between educators and children.
So in episode 2, we build on that foundation and share preventative strategies that promote positive behaviors, including environmental supports, routines, behavior expectations, and classroom rules.
In episodes 3 and 4, we continue up the pyramid to focus on targeted social emotional supports of emotional literacy and regulation, problem-solving strategies, and building friendship skills.
Then in episode 5, at the very end, we'll look at how to create highly individualized plans for some children who need a little bit more support with their challenging behaviors.
Well, throughout the season, we focus on preschool suspension and expulsion and the implicit bias that is behind those alarming rates for young children of color.
We also have a special bonus episode that gives teachers tools for how to seek early intervention services outside their program, as well as tips for how to have those sensitive conversations with families.
And this is episode 1 of our Positive Behavior Support series.
So one of the things we're going to discuss today is the importance of teaching children social emotional development and skills from infancy and beyond, right?
In addition, all of that responsive caregiving educators provide in the context of relationships is key to fostering social emotional development. So we'll be sharing lots of relationship building strategies.
Right. So we're also going to discuss factors that influence how we see children's challenging behaviors. So things such as a child's development, their temperament, our own upbringing and cultural background. And then all of those negative feelings that can come up when we view or see or are with a child who has challenging behaviors.
That's why we have our next guest, Dr. Sarah Lytle. She is the Director of Outreach and Education at the Institute for Learning and Brain Sciences here at the University of Washington. Hi, Sarah.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Why is social emotional development so important and so important so early on in children's lives?
Well, we know that children are born learning. So from their earliest moments on this earth, children are looking to the adults and caregivers in their lives for cues about what and where and how to learn. And so it's really how they learn about the world, how they learn about relationships. And over time, they build this really rich emotional bond and attachment bond with the most important caregivers in their lives, their primary caregivers. And so we know that that attachment bond is going to help them learn all kinds of things about the world. And it will lead to a lot of academic and health benefits later on in life. So this really strong foundation in social emotional development is critical for children. It really sets them up for a lifetime of learning. We actually have some photos here to illustrate some early social and emotional development. So here in this first photo, you see an infant eating. So we might assume that he's hungry, that food is an immediate need. And by providing that for the child, the parent is being responsive to his needs and is really helping with that early social and emotional development. You know, they're having fun while they're eating. They're both giggling. It's, it's not just a feeding experience, it's a bonding experience.
Sweet, sweet photo.
In the second photo here, you actually see a toddler who might be showing some signs of distress or discomfort. He's laying down, but he's giving us some cues that maybe he's not very happy. So maybe some distress going on. He's got his blanket that he's holding very tightly. He's got his thumb in his mouth. And both of those are cues that he's really doing some self-soothing, this idea that he's using those as tools to calm himself down. And it might just be that he needs, some time away, he needs, to calm down and, get out of the flurry of activity for a moment. But that's really the start of self-regulation, this idea that children are able to regulate their own emotions. Yeah. And in this third photo, you see a child experiencing some really upsetting emotions. So the caregiver here is, hugging him. He looks to be very upset. We don't know what happened, of course, but this happens to kids, pretty frequently. They have big feelings, and oftentimes they're not necessarily sure how to manage them. And so the adults in their lives are really there to help them do that. So recognizing those emotions, and then what do you do when you have that feeling?
Right, so that connection between the two of them, you can see she really is trying to support him and really listening. She's just really observing and listening. So you mentioned this responsive caregiving. What does that really look like?
Yeah, so responsive caregiving is really important to children's social and emotional development. And we know that it comes with nurturing a child's needs based on their individual needs. You're really thinking about customizing your interaction with a child for that child and where they are developmentally, but where they are individually too. So we're thinking a lot about individual differences here. And it means being more responsive than not. We know that nobody can be 100% responsive over time. That would be an impossible goal to set. But the idea here is consistency. So you're looking to be that consistent and responsive caregiver for a child. So meeting their needs, helping them deal with emotions, having those positive relationships and interactions over time. And we know that that really supports children in their development and can lead to a lot of really good things later, both health and academic outcomes. And so a big part of the strategies that you can use as a teacher to be a responsive caregiver really involves developing those relationships and getting to know those individual kids. And that means doing a lot of observation. So understanding what is normal and baseline and typical for one child, that might not be for another child. And that really allows you to do that customization bit. So that observing, the really responding to cues that you see from children that you know are perhaps not normal for that child in particular, that's really important. We know that consistent routines can help kids. So this idea that they can have, really strong expectations about what's going to happen and when, and knowing what comes next, that all really helps them manage their emotions and sort of understand the world around them. So we have some more photos here to look at what that might look like in practice. So here you see a caregiver sitting on a couch with a child, and they're reading a book, and they look like they're having a great time. They really do. They've got, the teddy bear next to them, lots of pillows and a blanket, but you can see they're both really engaged in this book reading experience. So that's a great, and looks like it's a great responsive interaction. So here you have a caregiver who is working with two different children, and she's got one cuddled up on her lap and cuddled close. But then this other child seems to be very, very excited about something that's happened. And so the caregiver is really matching her affect, ready to give her that big high five. And so you see a lot of joy in this photo, and I think that's matched both between the caregiver and the child. So again, this sort of matching is a really important piece of responsive caregiving.
All of this is really just screaming relationships to me. Like building relationships seems to be the key.
I completely agree. And I would think of that not only in terms of relationships with the individual child, which is certainly very important. That's how you start to get this customization bit, so how you interact with each individual child. But I also think that relationships with families are key. So the more you can build a relationship with a child's family, that's going to let you know about their customs, their culture, their expectations for their child in the school environment. And all of that is really going to inform how you interact with each child on a daily basis. So yes, relationships are key.
Relationships are key.
Thank you, Sarah.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. We are so excited to introduce this new segment. It's called From the Field.
And From the Field features stories with teachers highlighting their practices and expertise.
Oh, I am so happy you guys are playing together. You're sharing. We're sharing the bucket.
Big stretchies. Oh, goodness.
How many are in there? Kennedy, how many do you have?
For me, to be in childcare is important because I've always had these relationships with all kids of all ages. The way we communicate with babies, the way that we teach them, we guide them, has to do a lot with the way that they feel, they get comfortable, they grow. Essentially, the babies just want to know they're cared for and they're loved. I talk to the babies a lot. They look at me, they see me, they talk to me in their own way. When they're smiling, like I know I'm giving them the care, the love, the words that they're looking for. Like there's this little song that I always sing to Gio because he speaks Spanish. So I always say, Gio, Gio, ¿dónde estás? Gio, Gio. So I'm saying, where are you?
Giovanni, where's my friend?
Gio, Gio, ¿dónde estás? ¿Dónde estás, Gio?
And the other babies respond to it right away because they hear me singing it all the time, and then they're looking for Gio. They all have different backgrounds and different languages, and to share, not to see us as different, but like to share so that we can be a family in here, because essentially this is important for the kids. They feel like they're at home in here. In terms of building relationships with the families, I usually come up with them and try to talk to them about how wonderful their baby is, how wonderful, how he engages in play, how we're building this connection. Oh, we had so much fun dancing today. We did this and this. Your baby moved like this today. And then they feel great about it. And then they know that we're caring for them. Not only that, they see us as they're learning. They're learning from these teachers. So little things that the parents can find out about their own kid that they probably didn't know. Essentially, I have a belief that if we give them a healthy and a happy childhood, they're gonna be successful when they're adults. And they're gonna be like, have all these memories, and they're gonna be so happy. It's just the childhood. Let us just live, play, live, be happy.
All right, we have a special edition interview here today. Hi, Gail.
Hi, Dawn.
I'm so glad that you could do this with us. Gail is faculty here at the University of Washington and also our visionary director here at Cultivate Learning. But in addition to that, especially as we're getting this positive behavior support season, Gail has such deep expertise in this area, and you've been doing research for years. And so I really wanted to ask you some questions about relationships.
Well, I'm so glad you're here, and what a great topic.
We just watched the video of Cecilia, and she was doing all this wonderful bonding with the infant, and you know, it kind of struck a chord with me because I thought back to when I was teaching and thought, sometimes it wasn't always easy for me, especially when it came to challenging behaviors.
It's so true that having a strong relationship with a child, a strong positive relationship, not only helps them in terms of their social emotional development, but it helps them with all kinds of learning. Yeah. But some things get in the way of building a strong positive relationship with young children. And I think that one of those things, and I wonder if this is what you're thinking about, are those like hot buttons, right? So there are certain behaviors that that a child might exhibit that might push our buttons, and it's so personal, right? It's different for every teacher, you know. And I think we even like have talked to some teachers about this.
Yeah, we did. We got a video of some teachers telling us what their hot buttons are, just because it's a really common thing, and we thought it'd be great for teachers to share about it.
All right, let's take a listen.
The behavior that most pushes my buttons is when a child targets another child, the same child over and over again by hitting or teasing, but targets one student.
Tantruming, screaming, crying, out of control.
Running away out of the classroom.
When kids bully other kids.
Self-injurious behavior.
Slapping your friend.
Screaming. Falling to the ground.
The challenging behavior that pushes my buttons is definitely spitting.
I think the trickiest behavior, honestly, is non-compliant, like a quiet non-compliance, like the child like won't respond or is just kind of like sitting there not doing anything or responding to what you're saying.
Throwing things off the shelves.
The really violent ones, like throwing a chair across the classroom.
The challenging behavior that most pushes my buttons is biting.
That was great. So first of all, it's great that teachers were willing to be so honest with us about those behaviors that push their buttons. And then once we identify those button, pushing behaviors, the next part is to think about, and this is sometimes difficult for people to do, but it's to think about what is that feeling that we have when our buttons are pushed, right? So a child exhibits a behavior, and maybe it's not Monday when we're super fresh and happy, but maybe it's, fast forward to Thursday and we're kind of tired, and maybe our car broke down on the way to work and we were hungry and we didn't sleep very well, and now the child exhibits that behavior.
On top of everything else.
On top of everything else, what is the feeling that we have? And so I think we have some of those teachers actually also talking about what are those feelings that they have when their buttons get pushed.
It just feels like everything's sort of caving in the moment, and it just feels really disruptive, even if it's not as disruptive as it feels.
Anxious.
Worried.
Disrespected.
When I am dealing with screaming, I feel very irritated.
When that's happening, I feel really frustrated. I feel overwhelmed, like I don't know what to do in that situation because it's happening over and over again.
But honestly, I totally feel disrespected.
It makes me feel like I'm not in control of the classroom.
I feel stressed and ineffective.
I feel frustrated, like something already went wrong in the classroom.
And so what do we do with these feelings? Well, one of the things that's really important to realize is that our feelings, our thoughts, and our behavior are all connected, right? So feelings kind of left unchecked, if you will, especially these negative and upsetting things that we're thinking, can really influence the way we're starting to think about a child or a situation. And then that's going to influence the way we act, right? So while we can't help feeling the feelings that we have when children push our buttons, we can say, wait a minute, my button got pushed, and now I need to check in with how I'm thinking about this child and this situation. And what we think about is using a little bit of thought control here, right? And so we can say, okay, they pushed my hot button, but now I want to check in with how I'm thinking. Because left unchecked, we can start thinking some things which, might maybe, oh, this child's a monster and it's never going to get better and he'll never change. Or she ruins everything, and I'm constantly having to deal with her and I can't deal with teaching other children. Or, well, just imagine if that's how you're thinking, are you really going to act in a way that's going to support a child's social emotional development and prevent challenging behaviors? Probably not. Right. So our opportunity is to check in with how we're thinking and to replace these upsetting and negative thoughts with some more calming, coping thoughts. It doesn't mean we're replacing he's a monster with everything is fantastic, right? That's not very realistic. But it is thinking, it might be replacing it with, all right, I'm finding this behavior challenging, but I think he's just testing to see where the limits are. And my job is to teach him some more appropriate ways to get his needs met, right? I'm the teacher here. So it's just replacing it with a more kind of realistic, calming, coping, and positive thought. But the way I'm going to think about this is that, hey, I got this. This is a challenge for me. I'm going to overcome it. I'm going to think of some new ways that I can connect with professional development resources or others, or even just kind of think some more deeply about this. Again, those buttons get pushed, but the way we're going to think about it is really then going to influence how effective we can be. Because one of the things that I think when a child engages in behaviors that we find challenging, that pushes our hot buttons, I think that one thought that we want to have, or one reflection to have, is, what is my relationship like with this child? And one of the things I was thinking, I see a little piggy bank here, and I think one of the most, for me, a really great metaphor around the relationship that we have with a child, or with anyone really, is to be thinking about it as a piggy bank, right? To be thinking about what's our relationship piggy bank like. And if you think about anyone that you have a positive relationship with, that relationship was built by a series of positive interactions over time, right? So we shared a laugh, we had something in common, we had a good conversation, we had lunch together, so a series of positive interactions over time has built that relationship to be a positive relationship. And every once in a while, there might be a relationship withdrawal, right? So maybe maybe somebody doesn't return a phone call or something like that, but it's okay because we got a really full piggy bank, right?
And it's full of all these positive interactions.
Full of all these positive things.
Right.
So if we think about children who engage in behaviors that we find challenging, I think we want to think about what is our piggy bank like with that child? Because one of the things we know is human nature and in a teacher behavior too, is that if children engage in behaviors we find aversive, we tend to avoid them. So I think what we think is that we spend all our time with them. But when we watch teachers in the classroom, what we notice is that children with challenging behavior get called on less often.
Yeah.
Right? They get fewer opportunities to learn.
Discipline is usually harsher for them.
Discipline is harsher. Most of our interactions with them is around trying to control their behavior.
Right.
It's not about making deposits, right? Yeah. So if we think about it, their relationship with us is probably pretty empty, right? And so when we ask them to do things that are difficult, like engaging at circle time for 10 minutes that they might not find so engaging, sitting in, next to a friend or next to a classmate for a length of time, things that might be more challenging for them, there's nothing to draw upon there, right? So we want to think about how do we fill their piggy banks? Easy to do with children that we find really reinforcing, that skip into the classroom and give us a hug and tell us that we're their favorite person, right? Easy to do. But with a child that might come in and, and engage in one of those behaviors we find aversive, it means that we have to work harder to do that and be more intentional about that. So building that piggy bank. And easy things like getting on their level and using their name. It's giving them a hug or a high five. It's noticing them when they're engaging in appropriate behavior and just commenting on that. It's spending time with them. It's following their lead during play. It's using their interests and, I know they really like penguins, so I read a penguin book today for them. So it's things like that, little things like that can really build up that piggy bank.
I think really connect with the joy of why teachers wanted to be there anyway.
Absolutely.
So glad that we have you here also to talk about challenging behaviors in relationships and these preschool suspension expulsion rates that I'm hearing so much about. These rates are very upsetting.
They are extremely upsetting, and we have been studying this for over a decade now, where we've known that the rates of preschool suspension and expulsion are far higher, and it happens far more frequently than we see in kindergarten through 12th grade. And I think that some people might find that surprising. And in fact, a recent study where they looked at data from across the United States, a representative sample, they found that as many as 250 preschoolers are expelled on a daily basis. And I think that while that in itself is upsetting to us, because we can imagine how families must feel when they show up and children are no longer welcome, we can imagine how teachers must feel when they feel like they've exhausted all of their strategies and this is what it results in. But I think that what is even more upsetting, and I think incredibly important to talk about, is that we also know that these rates are very racialized. That African American children are far more likely to be suspended and expelled than white children. And that we see that there's this disproportionality, right? That we can look at and see that African American boys might make up 50% of the preschool population, but the rate at which they're suspended and expelled is in the 80+%. So there's this disproportionality. We see this on gender lines too. We see that children identified as male are far more likely to be expelled than children who identify as female. So we see both this gender and this racial piece. And I think that there's some digging into this too, because I think we want to know why is this happening. And so there's been some digging into this, and in particular there's an interesting study that was done by Walter Gilliam and his colleagues at Yale, because I think what we all think is going on, he actually has some data to say, yeah, that we might be onto something there, and that is implicit bias, right, of teachers. What he basically did is he recruited some teachers into a study, and he said, I'm going to show you a videotape of children, and in the videotape there were 4 children. There was a white girl, a white boy, African-American boy, and an African-American girl. So it's 4 at a table, and he tells them, okay, I want you to watch for the challenging behavior that's going to occur in these videos, and had this kind of cool eye tracking device, glasses on, and basically could see where they were looking. And they, with that setup, looked for challenging behavior. Yeah. Who do you think they looked at?
The black boy.
Yeah. And there was no challenging behavior.
There's none in the video.
There's none in the video.
But they still saw that.
But they see that, they look there, and so there's this bias, and you know, these biases occur. We live in a very racist society. You know, media images. There's all kinds of ways that we grow up with these biases, and they happen. We bring them into the door of our preschool classrooms, right? Yeah. And so I think about too, like, I mean, it was years ago that I was a teacher, but I had a very diverse classroom. And I wonder too, like, how was I acting? How was I, you know, was I seeing that the African-American boys in my classroom were having more challenging behavior? Did I regard them as having more challenging behavior? And then I think the other piece of that is, did I, when they had challenging behavior, did I react and interact with them in a way that was different than what I did with white children in my classroom, right? And, you know, it's one of these cases where I wish that I knew what I know now back then, because I would have been really mindful of that. And I think I would have asked for my supervisor and my coach to watch for that, right? To give me feedback on that. Was that happening, right? Because we know that we have implicit biases. I have implicit biases. How were they acting in those classrooms? And I think that that's where we get to this disproportionate number, right? That we see an African-American boy and we maybe think, again with our implicit bias, maybe they are more aggressive or more, right? And and then we can see that my interaction is influenced by that in a really negative and unhelpful way.
Well, I was thinking about some ways that you could become aware of that, right, in the classroom. I know that the CEFL has a positive attention tracking sheet, right? So even if you tracked over the course of a week, just who you were giving positive attention to, and that would just give you some data at the end of the week. Who am I saying positive things to, and who am I not saying as many positive things to, and is it happening at certain times of the day? And it's a personal tracking sheet for you, but it just, it's implicit. So, you know, some ways to really become more aware of it. And it's worth everyone giving it a shot.
That is a great strategy. I mean, because you just need someone to watch it, or even for you to keep track of it and say, wow, I want to change that, and I'm going to make a goal to change it tomorrow, and do even better the next day, and even better the next day, to really kind of be aware of it, and then take some action, you know, against it.
The tracking the positive attention, I think, is one helpful thing. But and you also mentioned coaches supporting in that process.
Yeah. So I think, you know, it could be a coach, it could be a mentor, or even just another teacher that was observing you. And similar to the positive attention tracking sheet, there's what you could do is have somebody observe for you, and they could track of all of the children that you have in your classroom and kind of what's the proportional makeup. And here in particular, we're thinking about kind of race and ethnicity and gender. What's the proportional makeup? So if you have 25% African American children in your classroom, for as an example, and then look at the proportion of who gets positive attention and who is getting some more behavior correction, right? And then being able to just look at that data. So a coach could take that data for you, right? So they could say, they could observe and they could see kind of who you're paying attention to and what that type of interaction, what's the flavor of that interaction, if you will. Is it behavior correction or is it supportive, positive interactions? And then just present the data back in terms of what's the proportion, how's the proportion of your attention kind of aligning with the proportion of the children you're being served, or that you're serving. So, and this gets at kind of what we're thinking about in terms of those suspension and expulsion rates, right? So if somebody presented to me as a teacher, if somebody said, you know what, just, you know, look at this data, who's getting what kind of attention, right? And right there, it could be just, you know, there's no judgments being made. It's what I did, right? But it's asking me to reflect on it and say, oh my gosh, like I only call on white girls, you know, during circle time. I had no idea. I only give positive, you know, I only give compliments to the, you know, whoever in the classroom. So it's just bringing it up to my awareness and saying, okay, I want to kind of make some changes, and can you come back again later? And I think that that's also something that, you know, what if I saw that happening in a colleague, right? What if I noticed that, wow, they seem to be incredibly harsh with the children of color in their classrooms, right? How could I bring that up, right? And so it might be kind of this like, you know, can you come in and observe me and what I'm doing? And that might be the foot in the door, if you will, to have that conversation with them, right? Like, I'm really thinking about implicit bias and how it might be. Can you come observe me? And then we'll start to have a conversation about it that might start chipping away at their implicit biases, you know, that unconscious and automatic stereotyping that happens, that creeps into our kind of our feelings, thoughts, and actions.
So I had been coaching before and realized that the teacher had a biased lens when it came to working with boys versus girls and what's expected behavior for boys and what's expected behavior for girls. And how they interacted with girls was different than how they interacted with boys. So there was lots of verbal interaction with the girls, and the boys were kind of off doing their rough and tumble, and there wasn't even an attempt for the open-ended questions with the boys in the classroom. So I just collected data one time, who she was talking to based on gender, and we just sat down and talked about the data because I knew she was ready to hear some of that. We had a strong enough relationship, and I knew she could handle data. That's how her brain worked, and it was interesting to see how she received that. I was positively surprised that she went to the point of saying, okay, I think you're right, and I kind of probably should look at that. And it did change practice when I went back and looked at it again, because we wrote a SMART goal around that, around increasing conversation or WH questions with boys, with everyone in the classroom, and it did change practice.
Our whole child care center could take that up. Like maybe everyone does that, and so across the board, we'll do a little bit of tracking, and because it can be sensitive, it can be touchy, and you would need very full relationship piggy banks to step in and have those conversations.
That's right, for sure.
But I love the idea of awareness first and foremost, right? Just thinking about having your mind be aware that this happens. We all have biases, and why not take the opportunity to investigate that a little bit. And you can be using your eyes to be a little bit more observant and see what's happening as you're tracking. And this is some sensitive, important work that we do, and you might need to be in touch with what's going on with you inside and reflect and transform your heart to move into a different space that you're having better and stronger relationships with children. Because we all want that. That's why we got into the field.
Mind, eyes, heart.
That's right. Thank you, Gail.
Thank you, Dawn.
Now it's time for some circle time magic.
I love this part.
These are quick tips to help you have a more effective circle time.
That's right. So thinking about relationship building, we can start that at circle time. So teachers can decide where they want children to sit within their large group circle time, right? So children can be placed next to a friend that they're creating. They can be placed next to a peer model who kind of maybe is a little bit older and maybe knows how to do the circle time. So all of these kind of create relationships with the children involved in circle time and planned ahead of time with a little seating chart.
Right, that planning ahead of time really helps when you're to try to manage a good circle time.
Absolutely.
And so you can also help children feel more welcome and see their identities represented at circle time too, because you can place their names on circle, and that gives them a place to sit. Or if they're younger, you can actually have their pictures so they can more easily identify where they need to sit in circle, so they can get to it more quickly, and they know what to do, because you have prepared them for that.
Absolutely.
All right, so up next we have our Try It Out segment. We are going to check out some materials with Kelly Heikela. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, how are you guys?
So we are talking about relationships today. What could you use?
You don't need a lot of stuff to build relationships, but these are some really great tools to help you once you've kind of decided which children maybe need a little bit of extra support from yourself or maybe need a little bit of extra positive reinforcement. A really great idea is I just have these 3 rubber bands on my arm. And so maybe my goal is I'm going to give 3 positive supports to this one child throughout the day. And so this is my goal, is to do that for that child. And so once I've given a positive compliment or played with that child, I'm going to move this to my other arm. So then I see I've done 1, but I still have 2 left to do. So this is a really great physical, visual way that you can quickly look down and see, oh, hey, I've still got 2 left to do for this child. That's my goal.
What about this?
So the next is all about me type of thing. And this is really great for helping children feel like they're part of the classroom, helping them feel part of the community, feel like they have a spot in the classroom, and that helps build the relationship with them as well. If they feel important and if they feel like they're represented in the classroom. So the first thing we have is an All About Me book, and this is a book that each child can do, and you maybe are gonna draw a picture of your face, you know, your portrait, picture of like your eyes, maybe your favorite things. There's all sorts of different things in here, and this is something that you could do at a group time or center time and have each child do one. And then if you maybe bind them together and put them in your library area so that the children could read each other's and they could learn about each other as well.
I mean, it just makes one child feel really special.
Absolutely, absolutely. Another great All About Me is, this is a poster. Yeah, and so this one is a little bit, maybe you have a star of the week if you want to do it that way. And so this is an All About Me poster where each child could maybe have one in the classroom, or you could have it as a star of the week. And again, this has, you know, how old they are, what their favorites are. They got to draw some pictures of their favorite things. They got to talk about, you know, themselves in it. And so it's a really great representation in the classroom of each child.
Great.
Along with that is a photo album, and this is something that, you know, you can have pictures of their family, the children's family. You can have pictures of, you know, their grandma, their grandpa. It can be something that lives in their cubby area that they can maybe go look at when they maybe are needing a pick-me-up, or maybe they're missing mom and dad. And it's also a really great way for the teachers to get to know what types of family members they have, who's important in their life as well. The next couple things I have are just about setting the tone of the classroom. The first thing I have is a big wearable hug. So if you have children who are maybe need an extra hug in the classroom, or maybe having an emotional day, or maybe just need some extra loving, this is just something that you could make, maybe each child could make as well. It's super easy. You get that hug, you feel really special about it.
I feel special.
Yes, totally. You feel really special. You get that hug. It's something that the teachers can interact with the children with too. Yeah.
Great. Love that. It's easy to make.
Oh, super easy. Yeah. So spending time one-on-one playing with the child, giving your full attention to them, actually playing with them, talking to them, having a conversation. Super easy, Play-Doh. Every kid loves Play-Doh.
Right, that brings all the children.
It brings everybody there. So sitting down, playing Play-Doh with them, you maybe could make your own Play-Doh with them. So you could turn it into maybe a science or a math activity as well. That's kind of one-on-one. They're helping you, you're creating something together. It's an experience that you guys have had together.
Yeah, there's so many great ways to connect with the child here.
Tons of different ways to connect with the child. And again, the best way is really just giving your attention to them, spending that time with them, and making sure that what you're doing is positive with them.
That's perfect, Kelly. I want to spend more time with you.
Awesome.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
So next, it's time for our book segment. We are heading to the library to meet with Blythe Summers. Welcome to the library. We are so excited to be doing this book segment with Blythe Summers. Hi, Blythe.
Hi.
Blythe. We're so glad to be here and doing the book segment in the library because Blythe is a supervising librarian. She's got lots of experience doing children's story times and used to work at the Children's Center. And we just wanted to center on the library because it's such an important community resource. And you can ask your librarian for all kinds of help when you're looking for books. So we're so glad to be doing this with you.
Oh, thanks so much for talking to me. In fact, this is one of the topics that I get asked about the most. Social emotional development, behavior, relationship building. So I'm excited to talk about some of these books today.
This is fantastic. I love this stack. I can't wait to get into it. What have you got?
So these are books about relationships.
Okay,
This
great.
first one is called More, 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 Said the Baby. And this is about, you see the 3 babies here, and we get to see these babies working with their caretakers. This is little Pumpkin, and little Pumpkin gets caught up by Grandma. Grandma takes the baby and holds her nose to nose. She swings that baby all around. There's so much hugging and kissing and sweet stuff happening in this book. And I just love, you could read this book with a child and pause and do those activities. Give them a hug, give them a kiss. And if you've got younger kids that you're working with, I Like It When and Besos for Babies, these are both great options as well for the same kinds of relationship building. Really great. This is You Hold Me Up. It's a beautiful book that reminds us how to support each other. Let's take a look inside here.
Gorgeous illustrations.
Yes. You hold me up when you play with me. When you laugh with me.
These are directions. These are great. Take a moment to laugh and play with me.
Exactly. Remember to do these things. When you sing with me. The whole book is just basically, yes, a recipe for
connecting.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, these are great. Babies' faces.
Yes, so we've got Feelings, which is Baby's Guide to Baby's Feelings. This one is my Facebook. We have Cradle Me. There's so many board books out there. Babies love looking at pictures of other babies' faces. And what these have in common is that they are covering the baby's emotions, and we see it so clearly on their faces. And angry, I'm a very angry baby. I have red cheeks. I'm bored and I'm hungry and I'm in a bad mood. But do you think a cuddle will help fix this?
Yes, a cuddle will help. Oh, that's fantastic.
All these cues, if we're observing and paying attention to cues, these babies are communicating with us.
That's right.
So, babies, with our young children, we've bonded, we've built those great relationships. They're so great that there comes a day when that child is going to feel distressed when they have to leave a parent or when the parent leaves them. These feelings.
Yep, drop off time.
These feelings of attachment can just explode unexpectedly even one day. So this is Owl Babies, where the owl mama has flown off. And the babies are wondering, where is Mama? She'll be back, said Sarah. Back soon, said Percy. I want my mommy, said Bill. And she does, spoiler alert, she comes back. But One thing I like to point out is reading this story, I like to read that line, I want my mommy really upbeat and happy, because if you get really, really sad about it, that emotion is just under the surface for some kids. So we've got to watch that one. We've learned by experience.
Yes, to keep that a little upbeat. Might have some tears in your story time. We don't want that.
We don't want that. We're trying to make everybody feel better, and that's a great book for doing just that.
I love that.
Yes. So finally, we've got these books here. This is Full of Love, one of my favorites. It's so important as part of relationship building to have titles that are diverse. We want books to share with kids where they can really see themselves. There's a movement, #OwnVoices, and it's about books that are written by a person who is from the group or the culture that the book is about. So bringing real authenticity to these books. These are so important for generating a feeling of inclusion. When you see books that reflect you, you feel included. Ask your children's librarian for diverse titles if you are unsure what those might be or what's out there. It's the library's mission to provide books that are relevant to our communities. So ask for these books, they are out there.
Thank you, Blythe.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Blythe.
Our next segment is called It's All About You. We include this in the show because it's important for teachers to have some things for them to do for themselves so they can think about their well-being.
That's right. It's all about resiliency and wellness strategies. So we know that research has told us that self-care strategies can really have long-term health benefits.
So Dr. Gail Joseph is going to join us to share some strategies. Thank you so much for being here for this segment where we're going to be talking about resiliency and wellness strategies.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. It's one of the things I wish that I had learned more about when I was a teacher, actually.
Me too.
Absolutely.
It would have helped a lot.
Yes. So I have a great practical strategy for us today. I brought some things with me. So I'm going to talk about a strategy that actually has some research behind it that will improve your health, your physical health. It helps you get more sleep, helps you have more energy. It will help you spend less time feeling upset or angry or sad. Help you build, I know, it will help you build deeper connections with people. I know you were talking about relationships, and so building some deeper connections, and just helps you feel happier, better emotional well-being. And so, I know, what is this? It doesn't even cost anything. It's actually expressing gratitude.
Oh.
Super simple. So I brought a couple practical ideas for us to express gratitude. So one is I brought a stack of thank you cards. So I just picked up some thank you cards, and one practical way that you can build gratitude into your everyday life is to think about somebody who's made a positive difference in your life. Maybe it's somebody now, maybe it's somebody in the past, and to take the time to actually write them a thank you. To write them a thank you. What did they do? How did it help you? And just express your gratitude. And I was thinking, like, you could even set maybe one day a month that you just reminded yourself, I'm going to send, a thank you card at least just once a month, right? And I said send it, but actually there's some great benefits to not only writing it, but if the person is if you're able to, is to actually go to them in person and read it to them.
How powerful that would be.
Incredibly, like how you would feel, how they feel. It's just a wash of calm and happiness. So thank you cards. So the other practical strategy is I just brought you a blank journal, and the intention here is to have this become your gratitude journal. And the idea is to put this in a place where you would see it on a regular basis, and just when you're feeling grateful, write it down. So it's not something that you have to do every day. In fact, in the study that they ran, they didn't do it every day, but they still got all of those benefits that I talked about with gratitude.
Wow.
So it's just on a semi-regular basis, writing down things you're grateful for. The food you ate, shelter, job, people in your life.
Sunshine.
Sunshine, exactly. So keeping a gratitude journal. And a third one is something that I love doing, especially if you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed. It's a great way to Get yourself calm. It's also something you can do on a regular basis, maybe when you're falling asleep at night, and that is to take 5 thank you breaths. And so the idea is just to inhale, and then on the expression, or on the exhale, is to just say thank you and something you're thankful for, just on that outgoing breath. And it does 2 things. So one is by having that exhale be when you're thinking about the thing you're grateful for, and even maybe saying it out loud, is it makes that exhale longer than the inhale. And that's what we want to do, because when we exhale, we activate what's called the parasympathetic system in our bodies, which is what triggers calm and content. Whereas the inhale is actually what gets us kind of energized and kind of that fight or flight is that inhale. And then the exhale is when you're calm. So you want to get that exhale longer, and you do that by expressing your gratitude. And then the last thing I would say is that you could bring this into the classroom, because you're never too young to start learning the benefits of gratitude. So children can keep a gratitude journal, children can write thank you notes. You could do a gratitude circle at the end of the day where children just offered something they were grateful for. Maybe you write that down and have a classroom gratitude journal, but just something that you can help children start to experience those benefits of gratitude as well.
That's it. I love those. Those are so simple but so powerful. I can't believe how many positive effects are just from really expressing gratitude.
Thinking grateful thoughts.
That's right.
Thank you, Gail.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, we're expressing gratitude. Exactly. Thank you.
Alrighty, so we have come to the end of our time.
We have. We're done with our show today. So really what we want to leave you with is that it's a process.
It is. It's an ongoing process that includes being reflective about our own practice, building strong relationships with children and families, learning how to be responsive, and with the overall goal of promoting healthy social emotional development, because we know that those has long-term benefits in school, but later on as children grow up to be adults. And then teachers is also about supporting your well-being alongside a child.
Absolutely. You've got to take care of yourself in order to help children.
We really do. All right, we also want to remind you that this is available for STARS credit, so you can go on our website and complete the evaluation and knowledge check. And once you do that, we'll be able to award you the credits. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone.